How to plant bulbs in grass. Planting flower bulbs in grass can be fast and easy, so long as you pick out the right site for your bulbs and know how to plant them correctly. It is also important to consider what your yard and weather conditions are like so that you can get bulbs that do well in your specific conditions. Method 1. Picking your bulbs. 1. Pick your plant out. There are at least a dozen bulbs that do well in lawns, however, it is important to choose varieties that mature early. You should also choose natural bulbs that remain year after year. The grade or size of the bulb is not important when seeding a lawn. Smaller bulbs will perform just as well as large premium bulbs. 2. Select bulbs that grow well for first-time gardeners. Tulips, anemone, and grape hyacinths are great bulbs to choose if you're new to gardening and bulbs. These bulbs rarely need care once they are planted and naturalize easily without clustering. They also grow in all zones and don't need to be stored during the winter season. 3. Pick out bulbs that will do well if you live in a cold weather climate. In areas where mowing is not needed until late June, tulip bulbs, such as Greigii or Darwin, can make excellent choices. These bulbs will give off a stunning display long before you will need to cut them back. Daffodil and crocus bulbs can also work well in cold climates, but they may need to be exposed to south sun during the winter. 4. Select bulbs that do well in a long summer. If summers last late into September and October in your area, bulbs like lily of the valley or Calla Lilies may be the right choices for you. These plants will continue to flower even during the longest of summers. If you choose to grow lily of the valley, you will have to keep your grass tall or plant a slow-growing lawn for the flowers to bloom as long as possible. 5. Pick out certain bulbs if you live in an area that often has very long winters. There are very few bulbs that will survive long periods of time in harsh winter conditions when left on their own. You can overwinter bulbs by choosing hardy varieties that bloom in the early spring like tulips or lilies. If you want to plant bulbs that are not as cold hardy, mulch over the bulbs with a thick layer of compost or straw after the cold weather has set in. This works well when bulbs are kept to a small focused area in your lawn. Method 2. Pick your planting site. 1. Take your yard into consideration when picking your bulbs. Naturalizing, or planting bulbs in the grass, can be done with many types of flowering bulbs, but they should be selected based on when they bloom and what temperatures they thrive in. Things to consider include how much sun and shade your yard gets. Most bulbs should be planted where they will be exposed to 6 to 10 hours of direct sunlight each day. Some bulbs, however, require less sunlight. What kind of soil you have. How hot and cold your area gets. 2. Consider whether or not you will be mowing in that area a lot. You should think about how often the grass is mowed. Bulbs depend on their leaves to store food for the following season. The leaves should not be removed or mowed until they turn yellow and begin to wither. Early spring, blooming bulbs like crocuses are ideal for most lawns because the leaves are usually gone by the time the lawn needs to be mowed. Later spring, summer, and fall, blooming bulbs should be fine where the grass is left to grow naturally. 3. Know what time of year to plant your bulbs. Spring, flowering bulbs should be planted in the fall. Summer, flowering bulbs are planted in the spring after the last hard frost, and fall, flowering bulbs are planted in late summer. Spring, blooming bulbs can be planted beneath deciduous trees since they will be grown and nearly done blooming by the time the tree grows leaves. 4. Consider how much space needs to be placed between each bulb. The amount of space the bulbs need depends on the size of the bulb. Small bulbs like crocuses can be planted 2 inches, 5.1 centimeters apart. On the other hand, larger bulbs like tulips and daffodils should be planted 6 to 10 inches, 15.2 to 25.4 centimeters apart. Method 3: Planting and caring for your bulbs. 1. Think about using a bulb planter to plant your bulb. This method works for all bulbs. You can use a bulb planter to make a hole in the sod, drop the bulb into the hole and pop the sod out of the bulb planter to cover the bulb. The bulbs should be planted 2 to 3 times as deep as the bulb's width. Water the newly planted bulbs until the soil is moist to a depth of 6 inches, 15.2 centimeters. 2. Know that you can use the free-form method to plant some bulbs. In particular, crocus and daffodil bulbs can be planted using the free-form method. Simply use a dirt shovel or small hand shovel to open a wedge in the ground and drop the bulb into the wedge with the pointed end up. They will grow their roots into the soil and be covered naturally with leaves and other debris over the fall and winter. 3. Feed your bulbs once they've been planted. Give the bulbs fertilizer when they begin to grow leaves. Usually, 1/2 to 1 pound of fertilizer is sufficient for 50 square feet of planted area, but this varies, depending on the fertilizer formula. A balanced 10, 10, 10 or 5, 10, 10 fertilizer works well for bulbs. 4. Water your bulbs to help them grow. Water them often enough to keep the soil uniformly moist until after they stop blooming. Spring bulbs do not need supplemental water in most areas. On the other hand, summer and fall bulbs will need to be watered regularly. Tips. Think about what sort of colors you would like in your yard. Different bulbs will have differently colored flowers.